And we're back. Welcome, everyone. This is me, Carol, your program manager here at Unity and Twitch host on your Twitch, essentially. And this is my co-host, Hassan. Say hi.
Hey, I'm Hassan, community manager at Unity and Twitch co-host, Creator Spotlight co-host. Happy to be here again.
Yeah. So in case you haven't noticed, this is our second week of Creator Spotlight. We're wrapping it up. Creator Spotlight is our summer-long series where we highlight you guys. So all of our favorite Made with Unity artists that have upcoming or released games that we think is really worth deep diving in, so we can teach everyone in our community how you can make games. Hassan, before we kick it off, why don't you tell us what our community should be paying attention to on the asset store?
Yeah, so many of you may be joining us from Twitter, some of you joining us from Discord, and some from the Asset Store. If you're not joining us from the Asset Store, I want you to know that we currently have the Smash Hit Summer Sale going on. So this is a 6-week sale, each week with a completely different theme. We're currently on the 4th week, which is the Fantasy Quest, where we're giving you 50% off all the assets that are going to help you build your very own fantasy game, right? So we're going to drop the link to this in the chat. We have all kinds of assets here to check out, like, nature assets, terrain assets, weather assets, ocean assets, like all kinds of things you can use for that would make sense in a fantasy game. And then if you look at the lineup, next week we have the Sci-Fi Strikes Back. So, assets that will help you build your sci-fi game. And then finally, we're ending it with the Last Chance, which is like a greatest hits of all the assets that were on sale previously, coming back one last time, 50% off. So look out for that. But today we have a great show for you. We'll be talking to Studio Fizbin about their game Minute of Islands. We'll be talking to the game director Anjin and the technical artist Julian about their game. And so let's cut to the trailer for the game, and then we'll introduce the team.
I know that was a really eye-catching game. The first time I saw it, it was just, this is my favorite type of like puzzle, adventure, beautiful animation. So I'm very excited to introduce Studio Fizbin. Welcome. So glad to have both of you here. Anjin, hi, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Hey, Carol, Hassan. Hey, community. I'm Anjin. I'm game director at Studio Fizbin, specifically for Minute of Islands. I previously did like 15 years of freelance stuff and joined Studio Fizbin in 2018. And I'm very honored that I was chosen to direct this beast of a game. And I'm really looking forward to you to show you some behind the scenes stuff and how it's made.
Yeah, we are too. And we'd love to, I can't wait to talk about your background as well, because it's very unique. Julian, introduce yourself. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having us. I'm Julian. I'm a freelance tech artist. I do lots of different projects, many of them with Unity, like just jobs for serious apps, some games. And I work in the same office as Studio Fizbin. And when they approached me if I wanted to do some effects for their game, I was like super excited and says, yes, I want to do this. So I'm really happy about the chance to show everyone some of the stuff, and I hope it will be interesting.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think your excitement is, one, very palpable, but two, I think you're underplaying yourself a little bit, because you're really the person that's making the magic of everything the engine is bringing forth, like all this animation and everything. This beautiful world exists, I think, because you're involved. So awesome. Engine, why don't you tell us a little bit about the game, what it's about, what exactly is Minute of Islands?
Yeah, I think I will do it over playing the game.
Yeah, let's jump in.
A bit of multitasking here. So
we can cut over to engine screen. Yeah, and we can
right
take
into
a look.
The gameplay.
Yeah, we jump into the gameplay.
I'm ready.
Can't wait to see some director's commentary.
So, Minute of Islands is when it comes to like genre, it's like a 2D puzzle platformer. It's not very hard to play because it's very much story driven, and we wanted players to kind of like experience the story in just a few sessions. We think that's good for the pacing of the game. And this little girl in the yellow coat is that's Mo, and she has like a big job. Like she's the chosen one, using a magic technology thingamabob called the Omni Switch, which helps her locate machines on her homeworld islands, which she needs to repair in order to get all these yellow things floating through the air out of the area, because they are highly toxic spores which have driven most of the residents from these islands, except for most closest friends and relatives, which are staying on these islands because Mo doesn't want to go. She rather protects these islands than to leave them. And on a very fateful day, 4 giants who built these machines we are going to see soon. So let me get moving. 4 of these giants who built these machines and who are driving them by physical force. Like they have to turn a crank all day and every day to keep these machines going. They all stopped working. They just fell asleep and stopped providing energy for their own machines. And now these islands are unprotected, and Mo has to go to the island surfaces and visit all 4 brothers and investigate what made them stop, and if there's a way to get everything going again. So
quick request though.
Yeah, sure.
I think this game actually has really beautiful audio, and I think we forgot to unmute it, so let's if you don't mind unmuting the game, I would love to hear everything.
I think it's the feed. There's I think my
And by the way, chat, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at any time. We'll be taking questions, and throughout the stream, we're not gonna fix it to like one Q&A at the end. We'll be taking questions throughout, so fire out them questions. Yes, exactly.
Okay, I should be sending audio to you. I can see if the
I think the screen share is muted. It looks like
that's on my end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see.
Jewel Naomi says, I love the music tracks too, but I also love the insane amount of detail, especially as time passes.
Oh, apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, then I don't know how to turn the music back on again. Can you unmute me?
Sorry, technical difficulties. It happens. This is fine. This is live production for you, but in post, we'll remove all this part. So thanks, chat, for hanging out.
so we have a question in the meantime, but from ABC Jeanette. Where did you find inspiration for this concept?
This is a collaborative effort in the team. So the game originally started with a game jam, and that which was very freeform, like everybody throwing in ideas. And then a few of the motifs kind of stuck with us. The main character is inspired by one like a comic book zine, in which our art director Tim Gaetke, who I will mention quite a few times today, has published a short fantasy comic, and this was quite the big inspiration for like the overall tone and the feel and the bit of melancholy the game has. And so this is like the starting point. And then there was I'm the second director on the project, actually. The first director was Marius Winter, who then had to move on making Say No More, which is another game Studio Fizbin published this year.
Another awesome little game.
Link to that in the chat as well.
Yeah, which is of course also done in Unity, because we do everything in Unity. So I was basically like kind of like the replacement director, and then made it my own. So it's a amalgamation of a lot of ideas from the team, and then I was responsible like taking all of these ideas and giving them a direction, basically.
Nice, thanks.
So, okay.
Yes, we're gonna try again.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm hidden. Cool. Never mind. I will do a few clicks now.
What I can add to what Anjan just said is, like, Fizbin is usually working on not just one project at a time. Like, Minute of Islands is a game that, like, and I will talk as a we, because at least in this project, I belong to the entire company. We don't only do one thing at a time. Minute of Islands is a game that we did from within ourselves, that, like, there's no publisher that approached us to do this, but we said, hey, let's do this. This is a cool idea. And there are other jobs which are more like contract work or games that are being made because someone else approaches the company and says, hey, could you do this? And often it is multiple projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that information. And we're back with some gameplay. So let's just jump into it.
We've got the audio back.
Okay, and now we can also... Oh, I have to remove that thingy. Okay, cool. So, dog content, great.
Of course.
So, yeah, and I'm on my way to repair these machines. And the main gameplay thing is mostly traversal. So it's about exploring these islands, finding all the nooks and crannies. There's a lot of story relevant collectibles, which I personally don't think are optional. I think they're actually quite essential, so I recommend everyone to get to them. One of my family members on his island, and this is my uncle. He's like the only person still living on this island, and as you can see by the open toolbox, he tried repairing this strange non-human made device himself, and he graciously failed. But because Mo is the only one who has the Omni Switch, which is the only giant's tool ever made for human hands, because she decided to live with them in the underground. She was just curious, scientific curiosity, and befriended them. So now I have to talk to my uncle, see how he's doing. And Mo is very protective about her job, so she's not very pleased if other people fiddle around with the machines. So we now have a quick conversation sequence.
Mo frowns, her frustration growing. She warned him not to toy with the machines. Mo's uncle huffs, disappointed at his niece's rudeness. For heaven's sake, was I meant to just watch? As the poisonous dust slowly
We have an interesting
settled around
question
my
that relates
island,
to what's happening right now. Iwil Nayami says, in terms of the game script, how did you go about it? Is it similar to a screenplay format? If so,
and wait
what are the
for her
differences?
to be done.
And if not, what is it like?
His heroics were simply unneeded.
Can you repeat the question? I was
Yeah, so
unable to hear it over the narration.
No worries. They were wondering, in terms of the game script, how you went about it, and if it was similar to like a screenplay format.
It was very similar. It was actually pretty much a screenplay.
Oh,
so
okay.
the game is very linear,
Yeah.
and you're following the journey of this character, Mo, and the script is very linear. It has chapters and chapter titles, and it has specific character confrontations, and there's a giant story arc on top. All the things you would expect from a straightforward screenplay. Yeah.
Right, so very similar then.
So I'm now going to repair one of these machines. As you can see, the energy coming from the Omni switch is pointing to the thing, because it also serves as an orientation device. So you can walk around the island and have like a compass, like the air direction of where you need to go, which is not necessarily the route, right? Sometimes you have to find the route.
Also serves as a crank.
Yes.
Very handy staff, yeah. All kinds of things.
Yeah, the giants have a thing for cranking. So now there's a connection.
I love that effect. And for everybody watching, all these, like, we're going to be talking about a lot of these effects you're seeing on screen. We're going to dive into how they were achieved.
So yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff we're seeing. So, and I will I don't know, like hint at a few things, so
Yeah.
Julian can pick it up from like pick it up and talk about it from the inside. So the thing is that most of the stuff Mo has to do is like rerouting energy from these plates. Like this was open right now, and I was able to have a connection. And now this air purifier has burned most of the spores away. And if I do this enough, the island is cleansed, which means the underground areas will open up again. They're shut to keep the spores out. And then I can reawaken the giants if everything goes as planned, at least. So I have to like pick something up from my uncle
Relief
to
washes over her
literally unlock
at the
another
sight
part of
her
the island.
success. Feeling
The reason why the
a little ashamed.
giants fell asleep is more or less the big mystery of the entire
His
game.
reconciliation. He hands over his key, a sign of his trust, and asks her to fetch them a bottle of his finest. The
We're
one
getting
tucked
some
away in the
comparisons to
shed.
Adventure Time about the art style.
Yeah, these are frequent. So, but no worries. The where this more comes from is from Tim Gateke's background as a published comic book artist.
I see.
Who if we have to directly trace it, it's more like a Franco-Belgian comic books, Ligne Claire, Tintin, for example, or
yeah.
the works
Yeah.
of Mobius. If you look at the artwork, you can also see that the art direction was very particular about a lot of things to make it look like a comic book. There's for example, all the line weight is identical. So no matter what you see on screen, if it's an animated object or if it's a background object or a visual effect, we made sure that whenever you take a screenshot, it kind of looks like it was all drawn in one go. And colored by the same person. So that was a big requirement. That's why we are using basically, like, Julian, do we use any 3D? No, right? Or
Like not technically 3D, but we'd use some stuff that you could consider 3D meshes. Yeah.
But like for example, the door we will now see opening is not 3D. It's a 2D animation. We did it in a program called Spine, which is a skeletal animation tool. But for this, for example, we had to isolate outlines and move them as individual graphic objects to have like the panning of the door. without them squashing and stretching and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I want to point out that this is like quite a technical feat. Like, it's one of those subtle things that not a lot of people would notice. It just because like you approached it from a 2D art production kind of notion versus a game development kind of approach, because it really does feel seamless. You know, the character doesn't feel separate from the world at all. Not even in texture, not even in like the depth or anything.
Yeah, this was one of the big things. What you might also notice is that we barely reuse any assets. So everything, like, we will see a zoomed out version of the island soon. But everything is like drawn into place by our 2D artists. Like the previous games we made were the inner world point and click adventures. So we come from this handcrafted background sort of experience, and this is the same team who made a puzzle platformer now. So our team was like quite versed in just filling screens, and then we transposed this to a puzzle platformer. Tiny subtle things which I think are pretty cool in motion is the way these shadows fall on the character, because they are not just projected, they have maps. So they kind of like follow the shape of the character. If you look closely, you'll see that on her, let's say, collar, the shadow kind of bumps out in relation to how the color is, the color is shaped. Stuff like this.
Yeah, this kind of attention to detail is really amazing, and you just see it everywhere in the game, really. Like,
yeah, it is actually the tiny things are actually making that very difference. We originally showed this part of the game at the Gamescom in Germany in 2019. And before we did this, we did something that's called plussing, which is a concept we stole from the Disney company, which was just a period of time without any supposed budget constraints, basically. So there was like a 1.5 month period where everyone was allowed to add anything they wanted to this scene. Just go for it. If you have an idea, if you want to have something move, do it. Don't ask, just do it. And then all of our teams, like even people who were just normally like systems programmers, started building shaders and experimenting with visual effects stuff. Just do it. We like to make this as spectacular as possible.
You do this early in the process, or does this come later? Very early.
Well, this is basically part of pre-production, because you need to identify what the things are you then need to reproduce over and over again.
I love that. So, actually, we have a very similar concept, I mean, here at Unity, where we really think that innovation comes from letting people just have that time. We dedicate time so that people do, you know what is your ideal situation for making this thing? This notion of play within the creative process. And I really love that. Maybe Julian might disagree because he has to implement all that stuff, but it's good. Okay, cool.
We have some people who are creating, in chat, who have created Twitch accounts just to join the stream. We're coming from Twitter, so thanks for joining us. It's nice to have you.
This is a good corner to show some of the stuff we layered on top. So if, for example, you look at the cave in the background, right? It has multiple parallax layers to give it depth, which is like if you don't do it, you kind of like not notice it. But once you do it, things start like popping and having depth. You can also see when I see that that when I go through the spores, I brush them around with the character.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see they have like the character has a bit of stickiness when it comes to the spores. So they bounce off, which is something we will also see. And then in the bottom you can see different water effects we made to bring motion to whenever we are in a water area. There's a reflection of the main character, things like this. I'm not sure if there's any. Yeah, there's for example, right in the front, if you like look at the rope hanging from the ring, it's sometimes wiggling just a tiny bit from left to right. And we covered the game in these animals. We covered the game in these tiny things. Also, you can see that the character is leaving footprints
Yeah.
in the sand, which is also super fun when she goes when she goes to over water areas. So she leaves splashes and rings, and we built quite a few systems to bring a lot of life, which most of them were established during this plussing phase, because people were just able to go crazy. As a more bats. As a thing, however, doing this plussing phase and then seeing what the game kind of like will actually cost per square inch, so to speak, forced us to restructure the whole game, because our original content plan wasn't panning out. Yeah, here's another thing you do during Minute of Islands. It's like what I told you about the collectibles. The fun thing about the collectibles in Minute of Islands is that Mo as a character is always ahead of you. She lived there for years. Meeting the giants is like a Tuesday for her. It's like you are the one taking along for the ride, but she isn't. She has a job to do, so she's a bit grumpy and straight to the point. But these memories, these are the things where she basically rediscovers her love for the surface, because she spends most of the time in these underground areas. So memories are usually I say, pleasant.
Mo's feet scrape at the rocks where they'd both sit at
I love like all these little
eating
details
her
you keep
sister's
mentioning.
catch of the day.
I see how they're also necessary to take it from this big static drawing to like a living, like a living painting almost, to a living thing, right? To make it feel like a real world.
Yeah, it's all those small things that make it absolutely not seem like the 2D painting that it is, but it makes it very, very much alive.
Yeah. For example, if you like focus a moment on the clouds in the background, they don't seem to be moving, but they do. They're just there's just a tiny irregularities and scaling and bubbling on the outlines to give them life. There's of course moments in the game where motion is quite more important, or stuff like this. You see that like there's a parallaxing in the background between in this gap, which is creating the depth. And this was like really fun also for the artists, because seeing like your stuff coming to life is super exciting.
I think it really shows that you have a design art background, because those little details you're pointing out is something very typical in art, that we're like, you want to, there's this notion that we just need to show everything to the audience all the time at the same at one moment. But it rewards you upon second viewing. And this game is like second, third, fourth viewing. It just continually rewards you. So I really love that.
The game is deliberately slow paced. We of course we have like quite a few reviews already. And some people really like that because they kind of like get into the groove. For others, it's like, it's a bit slow. There's not much action, but it's a traversal game, and we really want you to like spend time with what you're seeing. Yeah, I'm kind of looking for a good exit point right now, because this is going on for a while. So, but what you can see is that the levels have quite the verticality, and we are browsing through quite a few like distinct locations on this island, and we have like a cheap perspective trick. So the islands are basically like a bookshelf. They don't go into the distance. The further you go up, they're basically built like a bookshelf. So so every time the perspective does what we need to do.
I like how you guide the player with little details in the drawing. So like areas where you can climb up, you've painted like these like white splotches on the rim. Yeah,
guess
right
what
there.
they are.
My guess is it's bird poop.
It is bird poop.
Yes.
It absolutely is bird poop.
Yes.
I actually did not know that. That was actually a guess.
Our technical term is VSKs, which is for the German word Vogelschisskante, which translates to bird poop edge.
Amazing. I was gonna call it bird poop, but I didn't want to be rude. But I guess I was right.
Yeah, we realized that a long time ago. But so many games do this, right?
Yeah.
And in many other games, it actually looks just the same.
Yeah, no, but I love that self-deprecating humor.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is a good point to exit for a moment and to see how that island looked in a zoomed out fashion. So I will now stop sharing for a second and boot up the graphics program.
Yeah, thanks.
Great.
So since we took a look, we did some gameplay. Now we're gonna deconstruct the scene for you guys. We're gonna go in and take a look at exactly how you brought in all this great 2D art and built it bit by bit. And it's quite it is way more labor intensive than I ever thought.
Quite the feat. So you're gonna see how they get this massive drawing into Unity and how you break it down and have it be optimized at the same time, right? So
yes,
all that's gonna be shown.
Yeah, my part will be the part where I show how that stuff looks in the graphic program, like Photoshop.
Yeah.
I'm not using Photoshop. I'm using a program called Clip Studio Paint, which is an alternative illustration program, which has a few specific features for like dealing with lines and stuff like that, which are a bit more powerful than Photoshop is, because Photoshop is like usually more oriented towards image manipulation and retouching, and then was kind of like retrofitted to also be cool for artists. So we are kind of like we are doing both, but our export workflow is via Photoshop, for example. Because Photoshop allows to script, which Clip Studio doesn't. So let me see if things are loading. Yes, there is a bar. Loading file.
So if you're just joining us, if you're just joining the stream, we're looking at Minute of Islands, a meticulously handcrafted puzzle platformer game by Studio Fizbin. Feel free to ask questions throughout the stream. We'll be taking your questions and asking them anytime. There's no specific Q&A section. Just fire away.
I think it's really interesting that we brought in for Creator Spotlight, we brought in so many different studios, but it's really interesting that so many went a very, like I said, labor intensive way. Like they really, really cared about the handcrafted, the artisan aspect of their craft. So it was really important to bring that process in. What I really love is that to talk to the technical artists, because they're the ones and the programmers who are like, how do you let artists be artists? And I think that's like super interesting. And your process is really unique as well.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the VFX that's bringing that art to life in a way. And this game is a perfect example of that, right?
So I'm ready, by the way.
Okay,
cool.
Great.
Let's
jump right in.
Jump into engine.
Okay, what you can see now is it's the graphics program, and this is a screenshot from the section we just played, right? This is our uncle here, and if we zoom in, you can see like what I mean about like keeping the line weights and making sure that the colors and everything are matching and having the same techniques. Like there's almost no transparency in any, like no gradients in what we are doing. It's really just this flat colored comic book print look. So the print aspect of it was a big influence. So however, like if we now take this screenshot and zoom out, this is the screenshot now in context of the environment, right? So we can now zoom out, and all of this is one continuous multi-layered illustration. All of this. This is it's also the biggest island, so this is the one I picked to show around because it's like the most impressive. But this is what we did for all the islands. So if I now like remove this, so I have a more detailed area. So but let's keep the bird's eye view for now. So this is like the way you're playing. Like you're starting out here, and then you have to find your ways around these areas. And what you can see is that we have all these distinct individual locations mapped to one island, and they all have like their own kind of like puzzle and gameplay conceit and specific scenes. So you're spending a lot of time on these islands, but there's a lot of individual cool moments. There's of course also interiors like this. Let me see if I can get a better tool to highlight. Yeah, okay, it's a stop sign, a prohibited sign, but it's okay, cool. You can see it. So this building, for example, here is you can of course go inside and explore the building from the inside. And then you have to like go down here, and then you have to go up. This is the bridge we just crossed with the shadows on it. This is the first climb we made from the windmill, then went down here. Here's our encounter. This is the machine we repaired, right? And then we went back here, across that bridge. Then this is the cave. Here's a part missing. I can explain why that is, because these files are way too big to keep all of this in one Photoshop file. We are literally talking about like just this part I'm now like darkening. This is like 40,000 pixels wide when you start painting in it. So one thing we did is we have no anti-alias when we draw, so it's all the lines and colors. There's no half opacity into like in edges something. They are just the pixel is full or not. So it's which usually should produce like some stairs when you draw, right? Like when you have the pixels and you can have these stairs on the edges. But since we have an export workflow which also first downscales the artwork, then the interpolation takes care of the stair effect, and it looks like it was drawn in a crisp way. But this is also like, if you're interested in drawing in a similar style, this makes it, for example, super easy to edit and retouch because we have very limited colors, and you can like, you know exactly what you have to do, and there's no mixing, no weird edges when you start selecting stuff and things like that. So that was like super helpful.
Pommel's 90 says, now I understand why the files took a while to load.
Yeah, well, yeah. We will look into like one specific file any second, like this one. Yeah,
but you also have to consider that at any given time, the stuff that you see in one screen is made for a 4K display. Yeah. So this entire image is made to be 13 4K displays across. So it is ridiculously huge.
Yeah. And this is like where the most of the most of the cost has been dumped into of the game.
But what I love about doing it this way is that there's no cheating. You know, the island is designed a certain way, and there's no, like, in terms of level design, there's no cheating, right? It's actually all an actual island, right?
Yes, it's a full. It's a full place. So and I think this creates like some. This is also what the navigation and traversal is about. So for example, you will have access to this area right here with the bones, and you will see part of the abandoned theme park at the top of the screen. Like what we did is like we have very complex camera controls. So for example, if you move the character to this edge here, right, to this part of the screen here, it will the camera will pan to the left, so you have more sky in the frame, and the character will be on the right side. And if you work at certain areas, the camera will pan up for you, so you can see what's on top of the character while you walk past, things like this. So we also always have like the camera circulating around the main character, and the character is not always in the center. So to frame things as best as possible. Yeah, like this is super expensive. Like usually in other games, what you would normally do, like you would paint a few trees, for example, or quite a few actually, and then in Unity you would decide where you put the trees.
Right.
Like
Stamp them around.
Here, yeah, you would like you would create assets and then assemble them in Unity. We did a few of those things, right? For example, grass is something that was placed in the aftermath, right? But we decided to go with this route because this enables the artwork to feel as much as organic as possible. Like if you think about the idea that everything needs to look like it was drawn in that very moment by a comic book artist, they don't think in assets. Like they don't think in stickers to stick on a page. They just draw, and everything is kind of like intertwined and touching each other and pushing each other around. And there's much more connection and also tiny storytelling, because if an artist decides to put like a scarecrow in a certain place, there's no asset pipeline to go through. So we don't have to talk to anyone about, hey, can we have this scarecrow? Okay, who builds the scarecrow? Do we need to have the scarecrow? And like, who animates that scarecrow? Can we use the scarecrow again? Like, what's the cost benefit relationship here? No, the artist just draws a scarecrow on a specific layer, and it's there. So and this is allowing the artists to do like super much a lot of detail.
And it's actually a very weird way of draw call optimization, right? If everything is on that one background image, it is one draw call.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I will now do some show layer hide magic stuff. So this is one of the parts we have where, like, as you can see, there's like some slices, some slice lines. Because what we're now seeing is something called cells, which your Julian will show in the engine later. These are basically the tiles of the island. We are so when you look at the design of when you look at the sketch, hopefully, yes, there's a sketch. Let me so there's a sketch drawing, right? And this will then later be cut up into at least 4 textures, but it's more because it's a layered drawing, because Bo can go between things and sometimes between multiple layers of stuff. So, but these are the cells basically, and this is like the rough drawing. In terms of making it all fit together in the end like this is also just brute forcing it. So when artists are drawing and filling in the detail here, they have to also then first expand the image and then take the other Photoshop drawing, copy paste it into this Photoshop drawing, and make sure all the lines connect. So that there are no seams between the Photoshop files, because we weren't able to do all of this in one file. This is also part of the process. So let me see if I can wait a second and make the underlying game design block out visible. My computer is quite struggling with the huge file actually. So here you can see what is going on behind the scenes. So this is something we call block out. So in order for Mo to actually like climb all these areas and touch these things, we needed to have like an invisible parkour built in Unity first, and then we have, using the screenshotting tool, have an export workflow which generates the cells I just talked about from the Unity editor into bitmap files, exports them, which then can be loaded into Photoshop files and traced, so that the artists are able to put all the lines needed where they need to go. So this is basically the workflow. The level designers are so our artists are doing like a rough layout, then the level designers are filling in all the platforms and ladders to climb and gaps to jump over using this blockout system, and then it's exported again as bitmaps from Unity, and then it's traced.
So how often do you find yourself in a situation where the level designer changes their mind and then the artist is quite far along and has to redo a lot of the coloring and inking? Or is the workflow set up in a way to avoid that?
Well, the budget is set up to avoid that. So no, it's a bit like an animation production where it goes through different teams, and there needs to be some degree of certainty about where the platforms are placed before they go into production. Yes, we did corrections, but this was like an oh no, we have to do a correction moment because some stuff is not working out.
Right.
Especially with the early islands, we had quite a few of those. One of the tricky things is that our game is not using the z-axis. It's the layering is done using variables. Like it's scripted. So when the character goes in front or behind an object, it's not actually in 3D space of Unity. It's scripting, just draw order sorting, right? And sometimes things are weird in the draw order, or the artist drew something which looks like it's in front of the character, but it's, oh no, it actually needs to be behind the character because it looks weird. And then we had to start resorting the layers and doing things like that. But it's super expensive because every time you kind of like remove a table and put it like 2 meters to the left, there's a table-shaped hole in the image, which you then have
needs to be filled out. That's true. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And sometimes you get situations where you need the character to be in front of half of the thing you just cut out and then be behind the other thing. So we often have some graphics very crudely just sliced apart in the middle and then placed on different sorting layers just to make it work somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that for the artist is pretty hard to get the head around. So this is usually something we do once we learned how the character moves through the thing, is that but that's the magic of 2D. You don't know what actually further. So we also use this to our advantage.
Speaking of, like, how big is your team actually? Like, you're talking about all these artists and whatnot, but
it's like it was 2.5 years of production, so there's some peaks and valleys in this, but I would say it's roughly 10 people on average per month. So we're not a small studio. It took us over 2 years. It's labor. It's quite a bit of labor. And the artist team was quite big. There was quite a few interns during the 2.5 years, but we have like 4 or 5 resident artists doing all this. We have also an external animation team who did most of the character animation. Most of the object animation was done in-house by our own animators. So yeah, there's quite a bit of people power on this thing.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
For example, this thing which is now like colored purple it's just a highlighting to make things more visible. This is the door we just saw opening, right, on the bridge, and this is a unit. Let me turn off the shadows. Sorry. Like this is an asset that was then first drawn into place by our illustrator, and then later broken apart to be let's see here, broken apart to be an animated asset. So there's when you look at this part of the door, there's also quite a bit of workflow then involved in drawing a version of that door which has a different angle, and then separating all the lines and elements so they can also rotate. I think this is an older version of the file, because I think the one in the actual scene does not have these metal decorations. Because I remember that this was way too much detail to animate for the Z-axis rotation. So I think the door we actually see in the game is a bit simplified in this. But that's the process, right? So we draw these things in place. For example, this rope here. Let's see how that one. Yeah, that's this rope. So if I remove it, you can see there's some artifacts of outlines from the rope still on that background layer, because it was decided in a later step to take it out and make it so we can animate it using shaders. Julian will show. And then this area, all of this needed to be filled up.
So if you do forensic work on this whole drawing, you can get an idea of the decisions that were made throughout the process. That's pretty cool.
So for this is one of the earliest islands we produced, right? Like this is for the Gamescom demo where we did the plussing. So this was the one where we did most of the learning. And for later islands, we of course minimized that problem. We planned earlier for what kind of stuff we want to animate and what not, so it does not need to be cut out. It's like in this version, we basically work like a special effects company, like having footage and then taking something out and then filling in the background and then animating the stuff that was taken out. So that was a lot of stuff we learned. Yeah, there's also plenty of parallax things going on. Let me see. Yeah, these things in the foreground. The magic of parallax. I cannot overstate enough how much that bullshit visual effect is bringing, because it's all a lie. Nothing is moving in perspective.
But isn't that what game development is? All a lie.
Yeah, there's actually two women in the box with the saw in the middle, right? Yeah. This is like the process we did to get these illustrations going. And if we have a look at the naming conventions on the files, right? They are very specific. So there's stuff like MG and FG and BG, which kind of like, foreground, middle ground, background, these things. And then they have numbers, and they have also some suffix? No. Suffix. Prefix, suffix. Yeah, suffixes. And so these are really, really important. For example, like if you look at the foreground, right? This is something that in Unity needs to be its own layer, but it also needs to be exactly pixel perfectly placed on top of the background, because it needs to be seamless. You can see, for example, this is what Julian was mentioning. Like you see this thing, which is visually in the foreground, is just artificially cut. Because we don't need it in the actual foreground layer. We could have made the cut right, like in the U shape right here, but then the character eventually will come here at the bottom and will be able to jump here. And then this is, for example, stuff that happens, right? So you think, okay, all of this is foreground because Mo is going to walk behind this. Cool, let's cut that out. And then you play, and then you go here and do play testing, and the character jumps, and the head disappears behind the stack of wood, because the draw order of that thing is in front of the main character. But now it's a big problem. Sometimes you can resolve this through scripting by changing the draw order with a trigger or something here, right? But what we decided to do here, so the problem never comes back up, is we did cut up the foreground element so that part of the foreground is also part of the background. So when the character comes around, it will not pop in front of the character. Which is a bit surreal, but that's like this is a bit of like mind-bending thing. But that's all the draw order thing is like weird. So it's not designed for human brains, but eventually we will go into it. So, but
to be honest, like this kind of setup is actually easier to understand than changing draw orders during the gameplay and wondering why it's wrong.
Yeah.
So having this in a static kind of sense made it much easier to debug inside of the editor.
So like one of the challenges, right, is to make it like fit pixel perfect, because we can't like there's no leeway here. So if things are like let me see if I can make the problem here. So yeah, so if things are moving just, you know, like a few pixels to the side, we have things suddenly being double there, or sometimes the line, like this is sometimes the lines are on a different layer, and then we have like these double lines, like when you do the retouching, right? Things happening. So everything falls apart if it's not pixel perfect.
Yeah.
So what we did then is like we had this, and not all of these layers are full cell, right? So some of these layers are smaller than a cell. So what we did is we used Photoshop, which has information about the size of each object on each layer, and also the coordinates of each object of each layer. And then we build a script which is exporting this information. So this is the file name, this is the name of the layer, then this I think are the dimensions, and this is the last two numbers are the coordinates, which is like life-saving, because doing iterations on the artwork, because sometimes also stuff doesn't look good, or like needs to be edited and stuff like this, and then like having just updating textures, but things suddenly have a different scale, right? Then the coordinates that have been used in Unity are no longer valid. Like because pivot points are no longer in relation to the same thing on the screen and stuff like this. So everything is kind of like shuffling around, and to not like force our poor game designers to then like go in and try to put in numbers and move things around in order to align stuff again. This saved a huge amount of time. This also allowed us to go like first do drafts of the artworks, and then feed them into Unity. Unity is like reading these numbers and turning them into placement information for each of the exported layer of the Photoshop file. So this allowed us to do drafts. This allowed us to do corrections all the time, and all these things. And there was literally just a refresh button in a Unity inspector, and then it would just draw all of these layers of images again and put them exactly where they need to. We also use this for all the spine animated objects which are in the environment. They also have import and export, additional import and export files, which place them automatically. That was like a huge time saver. And if there aren't any questions for me to browse through the Photoshop file anymore, I think Hassan, you're muted.
Sorry, thanks. Not a question, but there are some comments about earlier you were talking about how you purposefully made the pace of the game slow, and you really wanted people to take time with the characters and the world. And actually, there are many people in the chat are talking about how that pace really.
Big sorry.
Whoops.
People were talking about how that pace really allowed them to like reflect and really made them think deeply about the story and the world. So I think you really achieved something with that pace.
Cool.
Probably something that couldn't have been achieved without it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that comment. Yeah, we are in general quite happy with the responses, but it's quite a hot and cold thing. So some people are just really loving it, and I mean, without spoiling anything, the game, the game has an arc, and there's quite a few things happening in the latter half. Some people pick up on the red flags for all the stuff happening very early in the game, and some people are actually quite shocked. But it's going to get very heavy. Like we have a content warning at the beginning of the game, because which I'm very thankful for, is like one of our QA testers who had to like play through the game over and over again. At one day just came and said, I'm not sure if I want to play it again, because some of the stuff is just too intense.
Oh wow.
And then suggested maybe there needs to be a content warning, and we're actually quite happy we did this.
Yeah.
Playtest your games.
Yeah.
I think I know what she was talking about, and like in my involvement in the game, there was a gap of a few months, like right in the middle. And when I came back to the production and had the first task in this new environment that Anjan is probably talking about, I was like, what is this? Yeah, towards the end, the game gets a bit less friendly, a bit more weird, and that is when things go south for the character.
I think that's the best type of content. I think that's what makes it nuanced, and games tend to have a bad rap in terms of plot and narrative and character. We tend to take for granted that these are massive, sprawling 8-hour, 20-hour experiences, but a lot of the times, no shade at a lot of AAA title games or anything, but a lot of them have quite one-dimensional characters, and this game is a deceptively because of the cartoon style. Obviously, Angela, you've talked about this extensively, that it's intentional, that you meant to go into this bright, beautiful world, and that the story is actually quite in depth. The character is quite flawed, but not in very stereotypical ways either. So it's, that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
But thanks for showing us the art side of this. So let's just jump into how Julian brought this to life.
Yeah, so we're going to show Julian's screen right now, and he's going to walk us through some of the visual effects that were applied to this art to really, yes, exactly as Carl said, bring it to life.
Obviously, it's not all my doing, right? This is a huge team effort. So first of all, like right, there's a lot of other people involved here.
It's all you, Julian. You're being.
Sure. I guess I'll really pick up right where Anjan left off and just show you a bit of what the scene looks like. We're still in the same island. By the way, we're showing specifically this island because it's a very early area in the game, and this is very much spoiler-free, I guess. There's a few things that you cannot see in the scene because they are only streamed in as soon as the character gets close. But what you can see, for example, is this numbered and lettered grid, which is equivalent to the cell indexes. So B1, for example, is one of these cells that Anjan was talking about. This is exactly one texture, one drawing, and then C1 would be the next, and so on and so forth. We don't cull everything that way. For example, these are animated objects, and also the parallax stuff is always visible because we were not always sure which cell it would belong to when it's parallaxing around. So we decided to mostly do this on the static content. Right, so let's press play and let's grab the player and just drag it around and see how all of this, like I go over here, and obviously I can be much quicker now than you can be when you play it. So I can move it
flying through the world.
I can be so fast that the streaming doesn't catch up in time. But as you can see, the entire island is only there in parts at the given time.
Yeah, that's a great way to illustrate this. And it is quite fast. So I guess there's never a situation where you see any pop-in because of usually the character moves at a slower speed, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like if you have like a really struggling PC, and sometimes you can see that the camera is basically faster than the load-in. But that's just when the PC is like really struggling.
Very low.
But in playtesting or something, it has never been an issue. Even on our lower spec devices, we used to playtest or on Switch or something. So we're actually quite happy.
Good.
The next thing I'm going to show is, as soon as the cutscene is over, is how the character will transition into the interior, because that is actually just another place on the map. It is in the same level, in the same scene, it's just over here. And some of the global variables change, and it's just one big trick. Okay. It's not, we still have all the other stuff going on over here. Okay, so let me get back out of the house.
One of the effects of building islands and levels and environments like this is you're spending sometimes like almost an hour without a loading screen. So because we crammed so many like individual settings or sets into one scene, or like technically it's multiple scenes, right, which are loaded on top of each other. Right, Julian?
Yes, you can see over here, this is not one scene. Not technically, it isn't. For iteration purposes inside of the editor, for the people actually working on the level, we split it into different scenes, which are then additively loaded when you start the game, just because it was faster to open.
Yeah, and also it allows multiple people to work on the same content
and you had spoken about how the streaming was absolutely necessary, especially when porting to Switch.
Yeah, because
talk to that.
I mean, you can see on my computer running with the screen share, Unity now uses up about 6 gigabytes of RAM for the editor and the game, which is not that bad. But on consoles and in even a bit more detailed environments, it is difficult. So we needed to split this up to make it work on lower end hardware and on the consoles, obviously.
And how was the porting done? Was it done in-house, or was it?
The porting was done with a porting partner called Massive Mini Team.
Okay.
They like we focused on the PC, this was also where our in-house playtesting was. And then it was quite a few months of porting. People who are following the project probably remember that we originally wanted to start to launch in March, and then had like technical difficulties, which was just bugs we weren't able to, like we weren't abide by those bugs. So we we took care of that first. So it's not easy doing this. For Switch, there was also something. Okay, now this is like super dev talk, and I don't think Julian and I actually are qualified to talk about this. But for Switch, there also needs some special system called addressables, which is a special way of loading, dynamically loading content, which is exclusive to the Switch.
Yeah.
Right?
It isn't. Yeah? No. This is no longer, and it never was. But we use it. We needed this specifically for the Switch, but it is something that you can encounter on any mobile device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was difficult.
It was difficult because we didn't originally plan for this, so there was quite a lot of work to retroactively put this on everything we have already built.
Yeah, like retrofitting addressables is not easy. I don't know a single person who says, I can do this. This is easy. Many people start out with that assumption, and then after 3 days, they're like, what have I done?
It must also be a little extra difficult in your game because of all the unique assets, right? Usually addressables are easier when you have assets that are reused throughout the game. Yeah. Right.
What is maybe interesting for people to see is that we really place this on a plane. There is nothing really free. Like this blue stuff belonging to the ocean is a bit set to the back because that is rendered from a completely different camera. But the entire world itself is really flat. There's nothing 3D about this, unfortunately. Come on.
One thing that the streaming but also enabled is like we have really tolerable loading screens. Like when it comes to loading times, we use the loading screens as well for storytelling. So every loading screen in our game has unique artwork, which is related to either what just happens or will happen, and it never overstays its welcome, which we think we are really, really proud of. And some areas like this island right here, that would cost quite a bit of time, like really, just to wait until it happens, like until it pops up.
I remember the times when we didn't have the streaming enabled at all, and also not in the editor. Then opening all the files, like all the scenes at once, took a considerable amount of time, like whole entire minutes not over 10, I'd say, but around that time. Let me see, because I want to jump ahead and go to a specific scene where I can show something, an effect.
Yeah.
You can see at the moment, by the way, our debug cheat menu, which most players should not be able to see ever. Because it is still in the game, but it should not be accessible for anybody ever.
Speedrunners,
especially you speedrunners, we're talking to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to jump to a point where Anjan already was earlier, when he's using the Omni switch to unlock this antenna. And let me just go to the most interesting moment when we shoot the energy towards the antenna. You can see some more information over here, like how we transition from one camera to the other, and some dev information. Oh, come on, stay. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to pause the game here to show some stuff, and let me dock this over here, and we'll remove everything except for the character and the effect to make it more easily visible and more easily debuggable. So we want to remove this, and we want the camera to clear everything. Okay, nice. And maybe get rid of the stuff on the left. Okay, cool. So there's not much going on, and we're jumping right into one of my favorite tools, the frame debugger. And we're going to look at how this effect basically comes together.
Okay.
This is a particle effect, and it spawns a bunch of smaller shapes with some behavior, some noise, some custom script stuff. So it basically it starts off with random noise behavior, and then the longer the particle lives, the closer it comes to the big blob that you actually control. So we're lerping all these positions over there over time, or over the lifetime of the particle, and to make it controllable, but make it still look as if it's like a coherent stream of something. I remember when I started working on this, Anjan gave me a description in words how this energy should feel, and that was the greatest thing ever, right?
Hey, what was that description?
Yeah.
Hey, please. Hey, can you make it in a way? This is energy, right? This is like power, but it is slimy. It should feel like you're pushing balls through a sock. And like, what? How should this work? And then I tried around, and at one point we were all happy with the outcome. Okay, so this draw code draws the character, some more spine stuff, the spores around Mo, and then we start drawing this effect step by step by step by step. And we are leveraging an effect here, which we do all the time, everywhere. Like, if two things have the same color, they become one object, right? We have very flat colors, so we can do that. We don't have any gradients.
Yes, exactly that.
Why?
Pushing a ball through a sock. The real-time effect. It looks just like it.
So in order to get an outline here, we draw all the outline color basically first for all these objects, and then we draw the white fill afterwards. And in order to do this, I wrote a two-pass shader, which does this with a cutout value. Basically very simple stuff. But when normally you do this in the opaque, in the transparent queue, like, because right, particle effects, transparent rendering, that makes total sense. Let's quickly select this and go to the materials, and over here. Because if we had done this as a transparent effect, this haven't worked, because these materials need to do something that I figured out doesn't happen as expected. I'm going to set all of these to transparent, and the stencil, which we added later in the production, to disabled. And then you will be able to see what this would have looked like in like a default shader without anything anything special going on, because this changes how a 2-pass shader is drawn. 2-pass shaders in a transparent queue are drawn object 1, first pass, second pass, object 2, first pass, second pass, while in opaque, it is handled differently. In opaque, it's all objects, first pass, all objects, second pass, right? So the order is different. And we absolutely depend on this. If this is set to the default behavior for transparent rendering, you can see how these, for example, there's an outline in the middle because this gets rendered. Wait, let me go to before mesh dynamic. Where is it? Opaque, transparent. Here, right. This doesn't. Okay, wait. How can I clear this so everybody will be able to see this again? Here, okay. Spread lights and then transparent. Okay, good. Okay, we will have to live with the fact that I need to illustrate this step by step, basically. Or is it over here? Yeah, okay. So this first draws the hey, come on, stay. The reddish part, and then it fills in white. And then it draws another red part, fills in white. And this is not the order that we wanted. And we absolutely need it to make more complex shape from simpler shapes. So what we did was a bit weird. We rendered the entire game in opaque queue. Although in 2D games, you usually do everything as transparent and you're fine. But for us, it worked better this way. If we hadn't been using Unity 2018, because you can see the project is a bit old, we might have just written a custom render pipeline for this, right? Like today, we would probably approach this that way. But 2.5 years ago, we absolutely wouldn't. So we figured out a way to do this in a different way, simply.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's set this back the way it belongs and quickly compare how it's different. Yeah.
I see like Soul, like while Julian is clicking, Soul Snacks, we left that to the artists. They decided when the scene was perfect.
And there are many artists. They get to decide that.
Okay, so this is like one part of this, and I will now go to a very different part of the level, but it is very closely related actually to this effect, and then we'll come back to this later on because this texture that goes into this effect is not so standard as you would expect. First, let's turn on everything else again and set the camera back the way it should be. Okay, cool. So we use this trick a lot where we make different layers of things and create more complex shapes from that. Another place where we do this is down here on the shore, where we have these small white foamy lines that go against the ocean, from the ocean against the beach. And in a 3D game, this is easy to do because you have information about the scene for the shaders. You have a depth buffer, right? And in a 2D game, you don't have this at all, which is kind of sad. When I started working on this, I got a concept from Tim, our art director, and it showed shore waves similar to these ones. And I was like, okay, let's see, how can we do this? What's the way that we can build something like this that is at least artist friendly in a way that they don't need to invest a lot of time or work in making these? How can we generate the data that we need from the stuff that's already there? Or at least as far as possible.
This was actually quite usual that the VFX were first individually concepted by our 2D illustration artists. So to make them mesh as best as possible with the environmental illustration.
Okay.
Okay, so in order to understand this, we can look at the cell image that comes in, and we do have this. We have this to work with, and we need to figure out a way to detect where we want to place shore waves. And what I ended up with is writing a compute shader that analyzes the image and turns it into a signed distance field. Okay, what the fuck are signed distance fields, right? This is an image that or a representation of data that gives you an idea how far something is away from a surface. These are more common in 3D usually, like for volumetric rendering or something like that. But we can do this in 2D as well, and this would give us a coordinate system to figure out how far away are we inside of the transparent space from the fully opaque stuff. And this basically created a perfect mask to create these kind of effects, like stuff that's you had a distance value that you could work with to figure out where's the shore.
Is that a bit like a generated gradient edge or something?
Absolutely. It is very, like, visually, it is super close to a outer glow in Photoshop, for example. Yeah. But outer glows in Photoshop do one thing different, unfortunately. Otherwise, it would have been perfect. When two lines approach each other in a shape like this, like the middle is filled by overlapping both distances together, and not with a minimum operation, but with a add operation. So it bubbles out in the middle. And we didn't want this because we use this for the outlined effects as well. And to show this a bit more closely, I'll just make one of those. Let's see. Like in this folder, everything that we put into an SDF signed distance field folder will be turned into one of those textures. So I'll just grab.
This is a bit like listening to Commander Data. Like,
yeah, well, but some people will think, yeah, this is exactly what I do.
No, keep going.
Okay, yeah. I hope it's not. I hope it's not too weird to follow, but you'll understand in a minute.
You're illustrating it really well.
Yeah. Our users love this is exactly what they do, right?
Yeah. So. We just don't want to interrupt you. You're in a flow right now. We want you to keep going.
I know what.
No, not at all.
Okay, so I'll just paint a completely weird, stupid shape because these are my favorite ones. Just something weird that is something. Again, like Anjan said in the beginning, we often start with stuff that is very hard edged. Like, come on. There is not really a lot of anti-aliasing going on here. When we export this into the game, I first put it here. Okay, so it is imported here. It is a normal sprite like any other would be, but I'll change the name to _SDF and I'll place it into the SDF folder, and then it will change. Wait. Right, you see, it got a soft outlined shape for some reason, and that is because on import, a post processor checks if this is a file that's valid to be an SDF. Is it in the right folder? Has it this _SDS suffix? And then the shader runs over the image multiple times and adds this soft outer edge. And it is always basically the distance to the closest fully opaque pixel. I can even explain this a bit easier here if we get a pixel grid over this image. Okay. I'll turn this black because black is easier to see. the compute shader will basically run on this pixel, and it will ask, this pixel to the right, is this opaque? Yes or no? Is this pixel opaque? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? To figure out the new alpha value for this particular pixel. And if one of the neighboring pixels is not alpha 0, then it will change the value on this pixel to a lower alpha value, like 0.9, for example. This runs once over the entire image, and then it's repeated again and again and again until we reach a value of 0. So this runs 10 times, 20 times, 64 times over the entire image to generate this super, super, super soft and accurate gradient. Because the accurate gradient is what allows us to turn this into a very good outlineable shape. And funny coincidence about this gradient is it's more efficient if you downscale the texture. Like I can set this to 256, re-import it, and oh wait, what? We did change some of the stuff later on because for shipping we needed textures that were not hot overwritten or not hot imported, but static copies of this. So sometimes I will have to change the names just to trigger this again. Now you see the gradient still has the same amount of steps, but it looks far softer because it is smaller.
Right.
Okay, a lot of talking. Let's put this into a scene.
Nice. Harry Alasavakis, who's also a great VFX artist that you should follow, is asking, so are you using some sort of flood fill algorithm?
Yes, it is basically flood filling. Yeah, absolutely
Awesome.
right. By the way, I love your city builder.
Oh, so cute.
Some community love over here.
Okay, so down here we have one of these shapes, and then if we apply the outline material to it, we can change the outline and change the color. Let me check. Why do we only have the one side of this? Or let's directly take the probe effect. Yeah. Okay. So should be able to change the width and the color. And this, give me one moment. Why is this just so absolutely perfect and not changing?
So the values are basically picking a threshold, right?
Yeah.
In that gradient. Okay.
Wait. This is not the right material. SDF outline, 2-pass outline particles, I think. Yeah. This should be correct. And weird. Okay, so you can see how these two are separated.
Yeah.
I have no idea why the width slider currently doesn't work. We'll figure that out later. But you can see the important part that two shapes basically combine into one just by being the same color and by being outlined differently.
Right.
Scaling them is a bit difficult. On particle effects, I counter this in the shader to keep the outline, like this value, the same. But when you just scale sprites up, you also scale the outline. In theory, we always wanted to prevent this as best as possible. So on
And that goes back to the driving force in the art direction is you want everything to seem like it was hand drawn, like a comic book, and your lines in a comic book would not be changing all the time, right? Your outlines would be consistent. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the thing why we insisted on all the VFX being also not just technically under the hood opaque, but actually visually opaque is also that a comic artist would not use so many mixed, like there are, but a classic Franco-Belgian comic book artist like Mobius would not mix media. They would have a line layer, and they would have colors below them, and that's like the print aesthetic.
I like this because some might see this as like a limitation, but actually I find it provides direction for the project. Yeah.
Absolutely. We leveraged our constraints to figure out interesting solutions.
Amazing.
And you can, like, something that I did a few times is we have just two shapes that rotate in different directions, and they instantly become interesting just because there is no clear line between them. By the way, what I just said, I counter the scaling effect for particles. That was exactly why it wasn't working. We need the sprite variant of this effect in order for this to work, right? Sprites, I should say sprites, when you're working with sprites. Okay, so
Thank you for showing that.
This is how these work on a very like superficial level, and the same basis is used for these. But these are different in one tiny aspect, because we analyze the image with the compute shader. We can also infer some more information from it. So I'll just take the same image and put it into the DSDF folder. And this is the thing that I talked about that I think I haven't seen anybody else do. When I re-import this over here, it creates an image that looks like this. And this looks super weird, something like a flow map or a normal map. And this basically encodes, am I to the left of a fully opaque pixel, or am I to the right of a fully opaque pixel inside RNG channels? And this allows us to know a bit about the image, about the scene. These water effects around these rocks, if you see them with a normal default shader, they look like this. But we use this information inside of this water outline to figure out, are the waves coming from the left or are they coming from the right, and very slowly move them around objects.
Is this also how you control? Like I'm learning really cool stuff, because sometimes I update the project and then this looks great, on to the next thing. But is this also how you control that the white stuff is only at the bottom of the object?
Yes, absolutely. As you can see, the up direction is set to 0.9. Oh wait, let me do this again. Right, so this is set to 0.9. If I slide it all the way to the other side, now there's more waves from the other side, which are occluded, unfortunately. But with the magnifier, this is difficult. Actually, let me turn this off for this. I can slide this to one side or the other, and on the up direction, I have a lot more white on the bottom. And because this particular image is cut off very sharply on the upper side, we don't see that much there, but this is basically moving the foam edge around. The side direction is probably even, you can see it better here when it moves to the left or the right. Like here, it's basically coming from the left and being stronger there, or from the right. And there's a bunch of other stuff in this shader which you can control. You can smooth the texture a bit further by getting a even lower resolution level. To get exactly this effect, you need I split it into 3 different parts. There is the blue layer, the dark blue layer, is like bigger waves that come rolling in towards the shore and then like fade away. All these sliders down here change those. When I make them super fast, you can see there's a lot more of them. The red layer is a lot more foamy stuff.
Harry asks, so you'd be able to use the same directional SDF to make the noise waves move outwards too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When you inverse all the speeds, for example, they'll flow into the different direction. Yeah, and you can control these different layers, which again leverage the fact that if it's the same color, it's the same object or looks the same. When I disable the waves and this one, for example, you can see it a bit more clearly. This is one layer of the effect, and this is another layer of the effect. And finally, we have this one. And all of these three come together. Like one part is something that's called min line, which is here to make sure there's always a small white edge around everything. And then this part is much more broken up with more noise. And this shader is made with Amplify. So calling out to some assets that we used.
Yeah.
We love Amplify.
Amplify shader editor on the asset store.
This looks like a mess to a certain degree, but it is super tidied up already, but it is a huge shader, right? It does at least three things at once, and decoding the SDF and turning this into something like this took a lot of notes, but it works out kind of well.
But what Julian is like mentioning like in two sentences is when about leveraging the colors. The limited art direction, like meaning that there's so limited colors and no sculpting through lighting and no gradients and stuff, also means that you can like put stuff on top of each other and it visually merges because there's no tiny differences in hues and stuff. It's just you have this one dark blue in the water, right? There's a bright blue and there's a dark blue, and that's it. And it's always the same exact dark blue, so you can put everything that's dark blue in the water will merge to the silhouettes, basically will merge the shapes.
Oh, like the comic book artist pulled out one brush or one colored marker and
exactly like that. And apart from that, this is just layering a lot of noises to break up the shapes a bit. But you can see how all these sliders just change the appearance of this watery look. For the artists who built the scenes, this was very much pick out the bottom part of this, cut it out, and re-import it with that SDF suffix. Like all of these always belong to a certain cell and are just placed as children of a cell. Like a singular rock in the water is a bit different, but these over here, for example, when I move these away, you can see this is more or less exactly the shape of the cell. Yeah, and we just ran the compute shader on this and used it as is.
Yeah. So when Julian mentioned earlier ago that he was away for 4 months and then was able to look back in the game and a lot of like the tools Julian built were designed from the ground up to enable our team to enrich each scene we are building with the VFX. So Julian always had the job to also create workflows and tools and something that is like easy to understand, because because we knew that he's not going to be there for the full production, and we needed to be able to create more environments basically just with his ghost present. So that's why there's so much work going into the actual tools, not just the shaders itself.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference of being a visual effects artist and a tech artist. Something along those lines, at least. Yeah, right. And I do enjoy making tools. This is nice.
Actually, I think one of your artists are in chat, Tim. I think he jokingly said, the oldest trick in the book, limit your artist's choice so much that they can't do anything but follow your vision.
Yeah, that's Tim Gatke. That's the art director.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If you have any specific art direction questions, at him.
Yeah.
Right. Tim, you're being showered with, I don't know if you've just joined, but you've been showered with compliments up until this point for your work. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And great job.
I think this is a good question for Anjan, actually. As Messy Coder asked, like, to the team, how much that was learned from the early games, which is to mean Inner World, has been used in Minute of Islands. Actually, you've mentioned this in the past to us anyways.
Yeah, so mostly not much. So it's mostly the aesthetic sense, because the Inner World games being like point and click adventures. Like in Inner World, we have like a mesh which decides where the character can go, and you click on it and it goes there. There's no physics involved, nothing. And this is like a puzzle platformer with jumping distances and stuff like all this, and the verticality. And so in our team, we it was something that was kind of like aesthetically in our DNA, basically. It's just the way our artists were thinking like and exploring. But when it comes to the technical framework, I mean, the point and click adventure, like if you're familiar with the genre, it's basically about rooms which have puzzles in them, and then you go to the next room, but nothing of that scale, right? So they can be loaded in one go, and then they're there, and then you're happy. So this is what, so it was a huge amount of additional research and development we needed to do, just to make sure we can even like draw this, like mentioning it doesn't fit in one Photoshop file, like how do we keep this consistent? And then all the workflows to get it into the engine and to avoid mistakes and things like that. That was quite a lot of time. We kind of like, we are only half jokingly wishing we could do it all over again. Applying our skill and frameworks to just go and do it again. But our next game are already something completely different again. So that's that.
It would be boring if it was the same again.
Oh, I like that attitude. I like that attitude. Keeping it fresh.
Always new challenges, right?
Yeah. I believe you were gonna show us the earlier you showed us the clouds and how they're slightly moving, and I think Julian, you're gonna show us how you achieve the clouds with VFX.
Yeah.
And the lighting that comes from clouds as well.
Because guess what is also using SDF textures?
Okay. Let's see it.
The clouds do this too. As you can see here in this area, there are no clouds present because we rendered the clouds in a completely separate camera, actually. This is because on those, we wanted a bit of 3D parallax, and this is actually rendered by a 3D camera. But the clouds themselves, they are not. They are, again, they are camera-facing particle effects, or quads. And maybe we can make this very obvious. Yeah, if we look at them like this. They are just, again, some random-ish SDF shapes in a particle effect. And we emit them here and just create this kind of cloud shape from their behavior. And okay, wait, let's look right in here. We have a few of them spawned to populate the sky, and then they just drift over to the side, and at one point they'll get despawned and just moved over here again, and then they travel again over the background image.
Yeah.
And during all of this time, they are changed a bit by some world space noise. If I move this one around, you should be able to see that they are only present when. Yeah, okay. I need to keep the game playing, and then they will be moving all the time anyway. They have some world space noise applied to them simply to make the outer shape a bit more interesting, a bit more cloud-like. Before I joined Fizbin, I worked on a diploma project where I also worked on clouds, which is loosely based on a paper from Horizon Zero Dawn. And I took the same principles and applied them to these, but in 2D. And in 2D, it's much more easy to do. You just use some Perlin noise and some Volley noise or Voronoi. And from these two, you can create stuff that looks very much like clouds. Like this. These patterns together can create these kind of bubbly shapes pretty well. And then these have some color properties which you can change in the like you can see it on these two, for example. These are different. The lower one is further in the back, and those further in the back get a bit darker than ones in the front to even give the scene more depth. Yeah, you have a bunch of possibilities to customize this. The noise space, for example, can be changed to world, and you can change the intensity to make them rounder or more bubbly. And again, here, just have some control, because this is more or less the same shader that we use in all of the scenes. And we do some more stuff for masking in these shaders. But the most interesting part is that these are being lit, right? They have some kind of light direction and shadowing on the bottom. And this is, again, kind of fake, but actually kind of correct. We have this custom light over here. And if I rotate it, you can see how the lighting on the cloud changes with that in real time. So we lit the clouds in a way that is very much 3D.
You're cracking me up.
I love this. I love this.
So good.
I had the same feeling about the art
Julian, meet Angel.
Yeah, so this enabled us to do some very dramatic lighting in the clouds. And even though it's a background element, they are always very present, I'd say, in the backgrounds, at least.
Like that, they're a huge integral part of keeping the scene like it. They are basically our skybox, right? It's a plane with these 2D effects on top, and they're super important to like. They just play the game and just stand on an edge of an island and just let the music wash over you and the wind and the clouds, and you feel it. It's not a background painting. It's not wallpaper, right? So they are hugely important.
Yeah, somebody in chat saying like, whoa, this is basically just creating the missing dimension. And the Messy Coder, who's an asset store publisher, said, these are now my favorite clouds.
Yes. That's exactly what I was going for. The lighting itself is a simple trick. Basically, it is very much Lambert lighting. So this N.L stuff that some shader coders will probably be familiar with. And on each quad, we pretend as if it was a sphere. So we take the normals of a sphere on a quad and use that to generate this kind of fall off. Like this turns the bend very, very flattens the sphere. And with this slider, I can make it more sphere shaped, if you want to say it like that. And you can see how the line moves over an imaginary sphere. This is not the only place where we do something, where we have clouds, and we have also some other tools to art direct the skies a bit more, because these clouds, they will be different every time you start the game. Every time you come to the menu, the game will look, this one screen will look completely different. And this was not always the best way to approach this. So in some other scenes, let me see. Is it 5D or is it 5? Give me 1 second, because I have this written down. In 5, okay.
Before you move on, I think we missed a question from Harry.
Oh,
since you're rendering clouds in a separate buffer, are you also applying any noise on before compositing? Sea of Thieves style?
No. The only time we apply noise is in the shader that is really powering that one particle effect. For what I can do is the fact that we use a different camera is just for separating these two layers better from another. because it was difficult with the parallaxing to make it work in the same scene or in the same camera, because we wanted very different amounts of parallax for the clouds and the backgrounds and the actual foreground stuff.
This is because sometimes we wanted to have the clouds feel like they're very close, like a fog surrounding you, and sometimes we want this to feel like at the horizon, like really, really distant.
Yeah, and what I forgot to mention is all the shading stuff changes a bit with some particle properties. I use like the age of the particle to change when they can be shadowed. Like very young particles don't get shadowed as soon or as quickly as the rest. For example, this one is a very small one, which should not create such huge shadow that early. But in this way, I can somehow control like the tiny shapes not contributing to the shadow, because it looked weird otherwise. We also have this. This is basically straight a concept from Tim. He drew this cloudscape, and we knew, okay, we need to have this in the game, or we wanted to have this, and we needed to move, but not too much. And also, how can we do this efficient? Right. So we adapted this shader idea further that always changes the SDF outlines a bit, but we needed a bit more from this. So
here's the concept. Good luck, son. Make us proud.
I don't care how you make it, just make it.
It is like that. But that, if you are able to just get a concept and make it work, that's perfect, right? That's what you are striving for most of the time. For example, in here, the shadow is its own layer, which you can move around, which you can draw. Just you draw the SDF shape, or you draw a shape, convert it to an SDF on import, and then just put the 5 cloud sprites dawn shadow material on it, and you will get the correct, like a small wiggling outer shape, which slowly changes. And the shadow material variant is only drawn in places where there is already a cloud present by using a stencil buffer operation, which prevents it from just being drawn anywhere else. This is all cool. This is basically just sprites. And I can deconstruct this a bit. Like the shadow is parented to it, so it moves with it. This is the big main shape that we have here that gives us the overall idea what it's going to look like. And then we also have these. Okay, now. We use a spline tool, and we spawn particles along the spline and let them flow down along it.
Oh, I see.
And since it uses, again, the same shaders, the rest, these...
It's superimposed onto, yeah.
And as long as like the color is matched to the brighter part, again, they become one big shape, and it feels like it is the same thing. Yeah. And now they travel down this path, and if you have more of them, it's even like it feels even more connected, and we create these huge, much more complex shapes with directionality, just from very, very simple particles. I'm not entirely sure, but I think all particle cloud effects use this one sprite sheet. And this is actually even the same that the tool, like the OmniSwitch uses. So the amount of textures that's going in here is very, very limited, actually. But you can make, like, just by changing the parameters of the particle systems, can create very, very different looks.
Right.
Yeah.
This also contributes to this because it has like this artist's handwriting on it, right? Because it reuses like the way the artist would draw lines when it goes about stylizing blobs and clouds and something like this. I remember when Julian talked about ignoring the smaller particles when generating shadows. I remember the the earlier versions of these clouds, which looked much more like a bunch of tennis balls thrown into the air and far away, which more like a flock of individual shapes and not as merged, which would not be how the artists would draw it. So
exactly, and that is what we always strived for, right? We wanted it to look as if it was a painting, like a comic book artist's painting all the time. And yeah, we had to adhere somehow to these rules that we imposed on ourselves.
And it's nice to see so much of the aesthetic being achieved within Unity. So yes, you have the artist signature on the particles. It's brought into Unity, and then you're doing variations of particle systems and some shaders in Amplify and maybe some shader code to achieve all those variations in the clouds and in the water and all over the place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I think, well, if it says open in shader editor, there's a bunch of shaders which were made with Amplify, but for example, this one obviously is handwritten because it was much more easier and much more directed when I wrote them in code directly.
Right.
Dealing with all this noise stuff is, for me at least, easier in straight up code. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is how we made all the cloud stuff, basically.
Okay. And I believe another thing you want to show us is the spores, right? The spores in the game and how that was achieved.
I'll go quickly.
Clouds.
I go quickly back to the scene that we're demoing anyway here.
Yeah.
Okay, these are only loaded in when we actually play it, because we have some thick, big yellowish spore clouds, which we often traverse to when we go into a scene transition. And well, let's just start the game up again to have a look at that.
I have a more like a bigger, just like a decision kind of like question for you, Engine. Messy Coder asked, like, how did you as a team decide to pick which version of Unity to use for the game, and how hard is it to stick to that version for the game development lifecycle? Because you're still on 2018 for this one.
I think Julian has more insight on that.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I'm not a technician, so.
Well, you know how it is. At one point, you decide. You keep working on a prototype, and at one point the prototype becomes more like, okay, we feel safe with going on with this now, and then you still update the engine, and at one point you start to become a bit. You're afraid, There's some stuff in this where I'm not sure if it will update without a hitch. So maybe this is the point where we just stick to what we have and never touch a running system. And for us, at that point, we decided, okay, we're going to lock the engine version and we'll stick with this. In this particular case, it might have been a little bit early to do this, because there are some features which were added, like just barely after this version, which could have helped us achieve some stuff, but we tried to backport that a bit with our own simpler tools. Yeah. The spores actually feature one of those things, like more like particle systems got the option of using a what's it called? A ring buffer. So anytime you want to spawn a particle, but you already reached the maximum number for this system, the oldest one is getting killed off to make room for a new one, basically. This would have helped us for one particular effect, but we didn't have this. So we worked around this and just tried to handle this in a different way. And I hope this will soon load again. Loading the game for the first time always takes a bit. I hope that it won't leave us hanging for too long. Happens sometimes, because it'll now load in all the audio files once, I think. Because at least I think that is what is happening. This is definitely a huge project, and some parts of this have not been touched for years. So the editor experience is sometimes a bit slow.
Yeah, like we finished production late last year, right?
Yeah.
So everything we did this year was porting.
And a lot of the decisions that happened since then were very much against usability, but much more for like optimization reasons. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, great timing.
Okay. Let's see. When we go to, I think, well, where can we see this? I'll just head straight to Easy Island again and just show the spore clouds hanging in the scene somewhere else where they are not disabled right now, I think. And then I'll talk a bit about how these particle effects were achieved, because there's one interesting thing that we do. Most of it is kind of standard, I'd say. But one thing is a bit special. Yeah, these over here. When you enter the scene on the normal way, you would normally come out of this fog bank. And you probably recognize this. This looks, again, very much like the other cloud shaders as well. So these use the same code, just different colors. But what existed before were these... Oh, why is the background missing, by the way? That's odd.
Because it's the project that was open for over half a year.
Yeah, and because I just changed stuff and I probably broke it. But let's ignore that for now.
You break it, you buy it, Julian.
I think that's like half of game dev. Like the number of times I've gotten that question. Like I reopen and half the things aren't there. I'm like,
Be very, very careful. As you can see, when I jump around, the yellow small poisonous spores, they follow me around. Anjin mentioned this earlier already, that they react to Mo running through them. It is very obvious when you climb up ladders, because there you're very fast. But in general, this works by checking if the particle is over the bounding box of the character, and then inheriting a little bit of the character's velocity. And this makes it feel much more grounded in the same world. Before, they were just random images floating around and they were not really reacting to another. But this way, now they belong to each other. They take place in the same layer inside of this fake world.
What we also did is they are also part of the dynamic changes in draw order. So they are actually always where the character is, and sometimes they are obscured by foreground elements and things like that. So they have some depth to it and are not just an effect which is on top of the camera image, for example.
And we have different kinds of emitters for placing these. Let's see. Oh, if I let go. Oh, yeah. Over here, this is, for example, very, very good visible. When Anjin played it, if I drag her around like this, they probably might not be activated, but let's see.
You mean the big ones?
No, not the big ones, but usually, like down here at the shore, we have some special emitters that have a different shape and which are local to the cell in which they are. That's like just a box spawning more of those. We also have a different kind which is closer to the camera because they are bigger and more blurry and a bit transparent to fake camera blur and more depth in the scene. This is what you want to talk about, right?
Yeah, and they also needed to be local, because we have like multiple of these air cleaners, these air purifiers on one island, and they are cleaning locally a specific region. Yeah.
And you can see how these in this specific cell just hang around over here. And yeah, like simulation space is local, as you can probably read. These are bound to the cell, basically, or to this rough volume where they're in. But there's a different kind, which is the ones that are mostly filling the screen. we have one volume of particles, which is always following the camera. Let me see, can we do this? If I walk over here, you can see how this red box is following me around. And at the edges of that volume, you can see how particles disappear when I go to the other side, or how they spawn there when I go into that direction. So we basically created ourselves a little frustrum particle buffer where we can have a lot of particles which always follow us around. They are calculated in world space, but anytime they touch one of the boundaries, they are teleported to the other side. And since this buffer is a bit bigger than the camera, you never see when you never see an empty space. And this allowed us to have a considerable amount of these without spamming the scene with 3 billion particles, but rather, I don't know, 1,000. So this is super efficient to have them around. And I thought this was a very, very unusual thing, and I have not seen it before, or at least not very, very commonly used. But it was very nice to have.
I love seeing it in the scene view, just watching it following you and then watching everything popping in and out. It just feels like the whole world revolves around your character. It's really wonderful.
This is what when there would be no camera movement, this is what the particles were built to do anyway. It's like once they reach the end of the screen, they would jump to the beginning so they can scroll through again, right? And you are abusing this by shifting the frame basically and catching them early to a certain degree or something like this.
It is very much like one of those fake parallax movement effects, right? That's right, correctly. The thing, how this is different or how this works differently is you really check the position. Is the position bigger than this value? And if yes, change the position to the other side. Yeah, that is more or less all of it here. There's like one custom particle component.
Yeah, Lickbeans in chat says, a neat little trick when you want rain in an environment. You can attach a particle system component to your character or camera so it doesn't overload the level. Similar idea here, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing with the rain is comparatively fast, and these are super slow. In the beginning, I did it exactly that way. Like I just attached it to the character and hoped that the spawn rate would be enough to fill the screen. And it absolutely did not, because these are so slow, and having them die off quickly and spawn new ones was not an option. In every camera transition, you would always see some blank spaces, and this teleporting trick worked much better for us. But I agree, for rain, this is perfect. Or with anything that's more or less fast, you can get away with just increasing the borders a bit and works perfectly. We do have some rain in a later level as well, and it might even be that we do it exactly that way.
And can you explain how you actually achieve that, when you walk past the particle, how you achieve the effect of it kind of reacting?
Mm-hmm. You see
zoom in on that.
You see the small green box around the character. Like this script here, it checks for the player capsule collider. And anytime we are inside of this box, we do an overlap check with the character collider for each particle. That's why we do 2 checks. First, the bounding box, that is very, very easy and very, very efficient. And then the capsule collider overlap check. And if these 2 return true, if the particle inhabits the same space as the character, they inherit velocity from the character to, I don't know, like 0.7% or 0.7 with a multiplier of 0.7. And that way we get a little bit of the velocity of the character added to the particle, and that way we can influence them and push them around.
You think you could bring a particle from the beginning of the game to the end?
It is very difficult, but you can. Yes.
It's a challenge.
If you do the slow walk, you can actually we have a slow walk with just nudging the analog stick. You can't do it on keyboard, but you can do it with a controller. Then you do like slow work, and then you can just it carries the particle on her face.
Oh, that's fun.
I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah, that's so fun. Definitely people are gonna play around with that.
But I think once you do a jump or something, the connection is lost because there's too much movement.
Yeah. Here, for example, you can see how some particles pass inside of the elevator or through it, and not all of them are in front. Also, just some further layering to give the scene more depth. And I will try to, because the elevator is kind of fast, and you can drag particles more along with you when you are in the elevator, and also on any kind of ladder. Ladders are a bit tricky for that effect, because ladders make you move much faster than anything else in the game. Like maybe this one. I don't know, Anjin, is there a ladder when I go up this path at one point? Or yeah, over
just
there.
Very, very
perfect. That's the one I was looking for. When I do this, you can see how the particle, like, it travels basically with the same speed as I do. On the hair, it's especially visible. But we toned this down to a degree where it's very difficult to see, because we considered it like a tiny bug that it's possible to inherit too much velocity. But it's tiny.
I'm glad you mentioned the hair, because that's something we're going to talk about soon. We're going to talk about the global like wind system that is affecting these spores, but is also affecting the hair. But before that, we're going to cut to a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back after that break. So go get some snacks, get some water, go to the washroom if you need it. We'll be right back. So stick around.
See you soon.
See ya. And we're back. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. So for anybody who's just joining us, we're here with Studio Fizbin's Minute of Islands, Julian, the technical artist, and Anjin, the game director. So we have Julian with the Omni tool, the Omni staff right now, which is the actual staff that's in the game, the cosplay physical staff right there. Yeah, show that off.
We can't wait to see this.
Shoot some energy blast, please. Yeah.
We want to see a full-fledged like cast of cosplayers for this game.
Yeah, so Julian was just showing off the VFX that goes into the game. We left off looking at the spores, so the particle effects that you can see flying across the screen right now. And we are now going to look at the wind system that is controlling these particle effects, that's influencing the hair of the characters. So let's dive right into that.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to move the character to the windmill area, because we have placed a lot of the wind objects that I want to show over here. We took inspiration for these small white lines that are flowing around everywhere in the entire level from various games, and especially one which is probably pivotal for all the non-realistic rendering games, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. This has these tiny white lines to illustrate gusts of air, and I think so many other games have this. We also needed this. And they are just very, very nice at just filling the level with some life. And to make these, we took inspiration from a physics phenomenon called double pendulums, where when you rotate two things that are attached to each other, they create a chaotic motion that is supposed to be completely unpredictable. Ours do not exactly work like that, but kind of closely, kind of similar. At least we took the concept of rotating two things in the same direction and made something from that. So we spawn these all over the level, like in the areas in which they can show up are like hand placed. Yeah. And let me see, this is it, right? And we spawn these wind objects. Some are called short, some are called long, and they all follow a path that has been drawn by an artist with Tween, another one of the assets that we use. And then we have two transforms attached to this that just rotate at different speeds with a tiny offset. And the last object in this hierarchy has a trail renderer attached to it. And these two rotations combined with moving an object along a path creates this kind of I don't even know what to call it. This wind swirly behavior. Like down here was one, here's one. There are at times
Little
difficult to
gusts of
see.
wind.
Little gusts of wind, exactly. All over the place. And they're super nice and actually very, very simple, as you can see. But figuring this out was quite the feat. And the developer who made this totally nailed it, I'd say.
Yeah, Katrin. But this is also something like in regards to the comic book art direction, right? Because how do you draw air, right? Like what do you do to draw air if you just have pens, right? So there's no, like you have to come with something. And this is like what comic artists do. They then use lines and fill them up. One big part of our inspiration also for animation was really old ass animated movies, like where they had to do like cell shade, like that's why it's called cell shading, right? Where they had to paint the animation cells, and everything they needed to animate was done like this because there was no CGI to fill the gaps, basically. So this was also a big part of our inspiration for Get Things into Motion.
Yeah, and to finish this entire wind topic off, what we really wanted to have, and we want all of this to feel very coherent. And wind is always present in all of the on all of the islands because there's always a small breeze at the ocean, and we created a small wind controller which binds all effects together that in some way are connected to the topic of wind. When I drag up the slider, you can see how the particles get faster and the character's hair starts to blow much, much wilder. And all of these systems, like even plants that are moving, let me see where we have some. Even plants move more strongly when this slider is bumped up, like over here. Like 10 is already a lot, so you see some weird distortions on the objects that are not made for this.
Yeah, that's too much. Yeah,
but we control all of this from this one object in order to have all these effects somehow occupy the same space, to make them feel as if they are the same. We can change the direction on this absolutely fluently, and we leverage this by really changing the wind when you walk into triggers inside of the game, and change the whole mood basically, because wind has meaning in this game.
Yeah, so for example, when you enter an interior, you walk through a trigger that turns off the wind because there's no wind inside of buildings, for example. And in the upper areas, like let's say the mountain tops of islands, the wind is much stronger than in the bottom interior areas of each island. We also had like some ideas to use this for some puzzles and something, but they are on the big pile of unused ideas. Something that is like really fascinating about this wind controller is that it controls a lot of effects that have been done by completely different people. So for example, it's really good to have animators who know their way around spine, because spine is not frame by frame animation, right? So we could have used frame by frame animation, which would have been, with the amount of animations, would have been quite expensive, but we were leveraging the fact that it's calculated and like skeletal animation to have something like the wind as part of the animation of the character. I'm not sure, is the code also flapping in the wind depending on the controller? I'm not sure right now. But
no. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no. But the interesting thing about the hair, for example, is like you can now turn the character and the hair that just still keeps flowing into the same direction because it's not bound to the animation itself. It's something calculated in between. And this is really something that adds like multiple animation layers on top. It's like secondary animation to the character. And the same goes for and then the wiggling environment objects like grass and tree branches stuff that was done by Julian, right? You did the shader for that. Then the and the particles here, they have been done by you, but the wind objects, oh no, the wind objects stay. Are they now blowing into the wrong direction?
Yeah, they are not, because they are very particularly hand placed.
Yes,
they don't. They're not included in the system.
Yeah,
that looks amazing. I like when you did a close up there of the hair and then moving back and forth in the direct. That looks so seamless and perfect. Like that quick movement. In fact, somebody in chat is like, "That's great. Please sell that as an asset store so we can all use it."
Well, I wonder if that's something you ever think about. Do you ever make a tool and then think, "Oh, you know what? This we could put this up, and this could be used by the greater community."
I guess every now and then you come across something where you say, "This is very solid. This is actually very good portable to other projects," and yeah. I guess for the SDF generator or for the lighting system that I'm going to show next, those are things that we could pretty well put on the asset store. We have never talked about this really so far, but yeah, we absolutely should or could consider this. The SDF generator thing, I would argue there is a lot of other generators for these kind of graphics already out there. Just not that very specific way that we use it. But apart from that, we have a lot of tech that could possibly be a good asset. But we also have a bunch of stuff that is so proprietary and so... It works for this one tiny specific situation. And apart from that, I'm too much afraid that it would break.
Yeah, right. Too specific.
Just a tiny anecdote for people in the chat who also work with Spine. You probably noticed that the outline looks like it's dynamically generated around the silhouette of the blue hair, right? This is similar to why Julian was using like the full opaque setup, so it's not the individual objects getting an outline pass, right? And this is done in Spine by having blue hair and black hair. And the black hair is slightly bigger than the blue hair. So they animate in sync, and the black hair is just basically peeking out behind the blue hair.
That's great.
So the blue hair is composed out of a lot of blue strands, which are drawn on top of each other, and the black hair is as well, but all of the black strands are below all of the blue strands of hair. So this is creating this illusion of an outline.
That's incredible.
Wow, that's some... Yeah, it's like Chad said, that is some good smoke and mirrors.
That's like, that's really just, that's a...
Yeah, it's interesting. You have the same problem that manifests in different ways across different things. So that's this outline problem appears with the clouds, it appears with the character, and there are different solutions to achieve the same thing, which is consistent outline width, right? Yeah. But there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, I don't know. It is definitely one of the major topics that always needed to be solved. With every new effect, with every new workflow that was needed for a particular effect, we always needed to find different solutions. Yeah. Because the shader trick wasn't possible here because we couldn't do the SDF stuff with Spine and vice versa, and it was difficult. But this way, yeah. Just figure out a solution is sometimes the best way to make it work in the end.
Maybe also just a tiny design detail about the spores. Sometimes you see these bigger, these are like one of the exceptions we made. Actually transparent bigger spores. They sometimes flow across the screen when you look carefully. There's they have a different parallax setting, so it creates depth when the camera is scrolling because you suddenly have like different layers of particles who are doing the parallax effect. But we started out doing them with full opacity, like the art direction would have demanded, and then it was just distracting, like having this big, chunky thing. So we decided to cheapen out and just use half opacity.
But it's interesting because you're also
very subtle.
You're faking like a focal length, because now it appears as though there's like a loss of focus for objects that are a bit closer, which I think is fascinating. There's no actual like focal length here, but you're faking it.
And I guess due to the fact that it looks like that, we get away with having actual transparent spores as well, because your brain knows that this is a thing and that this is something that happens. Right. And it knows these are actually opaque, but it's just a camera issue. Yeah.
As long as you believe it's solid.
Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
Exactly. So I believe we're going to transition to speaking about the lighting, right? So lighting on the character and the lighting on different objects and, normal maps on 2D assets. So let's jump into that.
What a fun. Normal maps on 2D assets. I'll quickly show this before we go. Like we have sometimes these bigger patches of plants which react to the player when we walk through it. This is also just vertex displacement, and these are not batched. These are all drawn as their own draw calls, and anytime you collide with a collider here, the script sends a small value to the shader and tells it, hey, you should be wobbling right now. And this is very subtle.
And one interesting thing about the wiggle shader Julian made is that it also has a map. So the bottom part of each object stays connected to where it is. Like when you have a bush, the bush can wiggle, but the stem can't. You know that?
You don't want the base to wiggle.
Attached to the ground. Yeah.
Right. And these also react to the wind.
So I don't know if you want to show it, Julian, but it's just a map that's like a gradient map that controls how intense the wiggle effect is applied to which part of the texture, which is also something when it comes to tools, something our artists could control, right? Because it's literally just drawing a gradient map and having one color where you want the objects to be glued in place, and then fading to the other color where you want the effect to actually grip.
We had two kinds of this shader. One was you paint an additional map version, and the other one is one where you can control the distortion or the movement masks with some values over here. And you can even make them visible with this little tick box. And that way you can see, basically, the more bluish it is, the more it will move. And it has different versions of masking possibilities. For example, now if I move it off and it's black, they don't move at all anymore. And when I fade it back, the vertices start to move again.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really nice to see.
These also do something that we have as a feature on some effects every now and then, that we fake a lower FPS. So the way we do this is this wind control script sends a global value to all shaders with simply shader.set_global_float. And it's a time value, basically. It is Unity time, but it is only updated at a 12 FPS rate. And if I lower this really, really low, you see that it looks as if it's stuttering. If we put this to 60, it's super smooth and perfectly nice. But at lower values, it gives a bit more animated feel to it. It is, again, something that's very subtle. But we decided that this was a very good trick, again, just to bring everything closer together.
Yeah, as Jewel and Naomi is saying, this really brings the world to life. Makes it feel like one place, makes everything feel grounded.
Okay. So last thing I can show is something where I would say we underused this because this was developed very, very late in the game. We could have done much, much more with this. You noticed already then in Anjan's demo, when we walked through the bridge, that there's a shadow on the character and that the shadow reacts to the shape of the character a bit. That it's not just overlaying an image, but it's changed a little bit based on the character's shape. That is a kind of custom 2D lighting system. It's not the same as the Unity 2D lighting system. That came out basically a week after we made this. And we were like, oh, that's so cool. Why don't... Oh, it's 2019 only. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
But we were happy with what we had. And this works so differently that that these two systems could exist very, very well side by side. You can also see it very nicely here. Because we use this for two things, right? One thing is shadows, and the other thing is lighting. You can see on the... let me make this as large as possible. When I have the Omni switch out and I walk around the environment, most objects don't get really lit except for Mo herself. And the light is moving on her hair, it changes its shape, so equivalent to how the effect over here is changing a bit. And it's always in front of her as if she's really being lit in a kind of 3D way. And when we come past this antenna thing, it's not just lit straight, but somehow the light travels over a surface which is there. And we do this by generating normal maps for our spine actors. We didn't do this with everything because, as I said, it was developed pretty late, and doubling all the texture sizes was not an option. Like generating normal maps for everything was just out of the question because the project was already so huge. But for all the objects where it could be
also
seen multiple times, we did it.
Also, due to the fact that the complexity of objects, even though they're all 2D, can like the objects may have, as an illustration, more 3D appearance. Sometimes it was just not looking good.
Yeah, that's true. To make it always look good, you had to tweak around on the normal maps, like with a brush, and make it perfect. Because we use a lot of this trickery where two objects are actually, like one object is made out of two, and the shape that is generated in the normal map gave that away very easily. But I can show you how this works and how we achieved that. Because it is quite flexible, I'd say. Let me see. In every scene, there's one object, one manager object, to which all of the lights subscribe. And inside of the tool is one of those lights. It is called Probe Light. And this is already being animated here by this animator. It's what makes the rotation. And if I deactivate all of that, we should be able to change. Yeah, we can change the alpha, which is basically the intensity of this light. So if I put this down, you can see how I light up the space around Mo. And these are rendered with a command buffer from the camera into its own render texture. And that render texture is being read by the character's shader and is just being distorted with the normal map. So if I set this to true and move this over into this layer, I guess, we should be able to see. You can see that this is just a shape. Let's see, sprites material, sprites default. Yeah, Can we? Okay, I'll show it like this. This is, hey. This is the actual image that's used on this object. And all it does is rotate this around and write it to the to the special render buffer. And then the actual character shader does the distortion part. If I approach Mo with the light from the right, it lights her up from this direction. You can see how it's shortly being held back by the hair, because the hair basically is shaped towards us and has like volume.
Yeah.
And the color makes this also very, very obvious. And if we move
it follows the lines of the drawn in outlines of the color.
Yeah.
Wow, just amazing details. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It looks so good.
And that was super fun, and it feels super solid. Like we just talked about, this is a system where I'd say, okay, cool, this is so safe, anybody could use it. Right. Because you create this component on something with a sprite renderer, and it just works.
I wonder if this, did this make a lot of people think that the game was actually done in 3D? Did a lot of people see this lighting and say, hey, is this character actually 3D with like a 2D shader look?
That would be super interesting, but I don't think. But I don't think so.
We had plenty of comments, but just without the lighting, many people said that it looked like the main character is 3D, because something that is normally happening in Spine is that the Spine characters have very elaborate illustrations, because you're mapping sprites to bones, right? So you can put more effort into the illustration, but that makes it kind of obvious if they are rotated and stretched, because you have surface detail, and our character doesn't have surface detail. Like the lines on the color, they are separated objects in Spine, so they won't stretch. We just move them around, and without that stretching or especially rotating surface detail, it doesn't look like mesh deformation, and it doesn't look like it's a Spine animation. So people were asking all the time how we achieve this perfect cell shading for a 3D model. That was the most common question.
I love that.
So to make this absolutely clear, this character is entirely 2D, but it uses a lot of the concepts from 3D rigging, because that's what Spine does. And the character is just rather high poly, and we use the polygons to stretch those out, and not so much the textures. And the fact that we don't have any kind of patterns or something or gradients is hugely beneficial to that. The fact that these lights and the shadow is drawn into the same buffer also gives us is the fact that light can cancel out shadow. Mo is completely shadowed, but as soon as I pull out the light, we overwrite the shadowing because we have a light in our hands. So it feels very physically correct at times. And that makes it just so much more believable here. And having these two phenomenons in the same space works pretty well here.
Yeah, I think shadows are definitely one of those things where maybe I didn't see it. Like your eyes don't see it, but your brain did, especially in games. And we talk all the time about getting like the best GPUs, and like shadows is the first thing I always like turn down lowest, because my computer used to be a potato. But it's like, it really takes you away from the game, the immersion immediately, when you see really blocky shadows that doesn't follow the physics. So this is like beyond that. I think that's why when you play this game, it really feels like you're watching an entire movie, and you actually forget that you're playing sometimes. I remember moments of it as if it's an actual something that I watched. Just feels like that.
I can just even when I disable the shadow, it you have the feeling that something missing, and it makes this world so much more believable. That some things have this. You don't even need it on all the objects. Just some are enough to explain to the player, this exists in this world, and this world is logical to some degree.
That's also something that like the comic books taught us, because we aren't bound by the idea of shading everything just because it exists, or generating shadows just because there is light. So we specifically use this, for example, with this bridge to enhance the idea of the character going inside of something. So something on top of the character is obscuring the sun, right? And this turns this bridge into an actual kind of like shaft to go through. It's no longer just a front layer of a bridge and a back layer of a bridge, because something is dropping a shadow onto the character, and suddenly it has volume. And we carefully picked these moments because we even like experimented with doing this all the time, or we had we had the idea of being able to, for example, have islands to visit them at night, and you could just pull out the Omni switch and then you have light and something. But it doesn't work with this kind of complex illustration. The individual, like, you have to go through every square inch and decide where's shadow, where's not, because there's no, the information is not, the Unity doesn't know where to project shadows and where not in this case. Yes. What we also did is we used this to suggest that there's something behind the camera. So there's, for example, scenes where you're going through a forest, and even though the object which is dropping the shadow is not on screen, just the fact that the character has this, like this light when the sunbeams pierce through the treetops, and then it creates this camouflage sort of patch lighting effect. We have this on the character, even though there's nothing, the object is not in frame, but it generates the solution, this illusion of something being behind the camera. So we lose this diorama sort of flat flat experience. So it's really a very, very powerful tool to suddenly make things appear 3D. Also, what we didn't want to do is didn't want to have the eyes get used to stuff like this. So when an effect appears, you feel it, because suddenly there's shadow. Suddenly the character walks into the darkness. Stuff like this.
There's some great questions in chat. So Harry asked, so it's like there's default directional light, and occluding objects adds shadow to the lighting buffer?
There's no directional light at all in the entire scene. The shadowing objects, I just had one sec, or I can show it on the visualizing object, because for this demonstration I just put a quad in front of the camera which reads that texture and displays it. All the sprites, it's always very much sprite based. Any shape can be drawn by an artist. That was our basic idea. It's just you decide if this particular shape will be a shadow and if this thing will be drawn into the shadow buffer if you put the correct script on it. Let me check, like J1S, that's what it's called, right? Like the shadowing of the bridge, this is again cell based, right? This is cut together with the cells. This is the shadow of the bridge, and the object that has this particular sprite attached to it renders into that buffer, and this is what you have in this render texture right here. And if we move that around, J1FG here, then you also move around this shadow. And again, it's the entire trick works by placing things the right way. And there is no complicated calculation going on here. It is really just the sprite 2D style being drawn into this buffer and then being slightly offset with the help of the normal map. It is much cheaper than actual lighting.
The character is basically masking the sprite, which is already placed in the scene, right? To a certain degree, yeah. We decided to do it like that because very, very often the shadows we use are divergent from the object projecting the shadow, because it looks copy-pasted. So if you like in this case, maybe it's not a problem, but if you have like a tree and there's just literally just some sort of calculation of actually projecting the object that is there onto another object, it looks copy pasted. It doesn't look like it's drawn again. And often sometimes we didn't like the amount of information, so we made simplified shadows for this. And again, like I said before, sometimes shadows don't even have like an object dropping them. So everything is in control of the artists again in this thing.
The initial implementation that we had was just using stencil buffer and doing this with polygon shapes, but that was actually more work for us. For one part, we didn't have really smooth shadows, and the other part was that we had to draw these shapes somehow because the sprite auto-generated shapes didn't give us that. And so we ended up, with the question, how can we reuse the sprite information that we already have to get shadows in the places where we need it? And this way we got it in a very art directable way. Yeah, basically it.
So then those shadows are displaced based on the character's normals?
Yeah, we generated normal maps for some stuff, for example, the main character. And this is how that would look. It is a normal map auto-generated with a tool and then hand-painted some stuff out. Because as I said, we use these tricks with things having the same color, and the normal maps showed very obviously where we did this. So we fixed that up by just smoothly painting it out. I think like over here you can see one of those occasions. Nice. Showing all the dirty tricks that we pulled. Oh no.
Yeah, you're breaking the illusion.
Totally. Oh no. Yeah.
Thank you for showing that. I think we're gonna wrap up. We had one question because Engine showed us something a while back during like one of our previous conversations. I would love to show if we still have a little bit more time, which is the water reflections, which is really smart and clever too, how you accomplish that. Do you think you have a little bit of time to show us that?
Sure. I'll show you one more thing though, quickly first, because
just one more. We're gonna keep saying one more.
one more, just one more. Yeah. We have this very, very brief moment where we explain when Mo got this tool, like when and how did she get the Omni switch, and we have this crazy scene which is nearly a static image, but it looks like this, and it's super intricate, and the machinery is very, very interesting. And for this, we also created this these normal maps, and here you can really see it shine on this machinery.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, this looks so.
When even just rotating this object makes the entire scene look interesting, but making it work took very long. So we couldn't pull this off in every underground area on every object. That was just too much.
Yeah.
Given the fact that we already created everything and would have to go back and re-implement this for everything. Yeah, but this is basically the best possible case scenario where we can show this.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for showing us that. That's really incredible.
Chad is saying that you're a wizard.
Basically. I mean, he does have a staff behind him.
Yeah.
That's what you want to be when you're an effects artist, right? Doing the magic stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's really nice because it doesn't compromise the vision of the art direction and the artist. And, that's just like, I really like to see that happen, that it's like, you're really bringing to life, really, we keep saying it, but you're really bringing to life, their vision. And it's really great.
I love how Tim was, also just very thorough when it comes to this. Also in working with all our artists, and something, because you don't see where one artist drops the pen and another picks it up. So that's just really, really tight art directing. I remember that I also drew some parts of the island. So we saw a rock pillar I drew, right? So, but I know that he took what I did and then redrew a lot of stuff, and then I had to do some stuff again because he's really particular about how the things go, and that's also why a lot of the very visible effects like this lighting is not everywhere. It's not just workload. It's also just it will start to look more and more like a digital video game. So behave. Let's just not do this all the time.
Yeah, that's really
Reserved
interesting.
for very special occasions.
Yeah, no, you're right, because like I think your brain starts picking up on patterns, you know, where like, especially video games, we're all trained to play video games, and we train to kind of push the boundaries of it. Always as players, we're like really tend to we'll break things, and we'll notice patterns or shadows or things that repeat. It's just part of the way we are as humans, I think, when we play games. So it's really nice that it's like feels like modest, some certain things. So it feels like special in those moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting up the game again because you asked about the water reflection stuff.
Yeah.
Again, this does the same trick, right? It is a shader which here in the reflection part comes all together that we did before. We have these SDF shapes which will give us an idea where stuff should reflect, and there's a shader on there with some noise which distorts the shape a bit, and the character has a shader which uses the same kind of world space noise. So when shapes travel through the reflection, they will look the same. And in one of the levels, in one of we call them headspaces. I don't know what the official, there's no official name. Okay. These are very introspective moments where we play inside of Mo's head, so to say. Where we leverage the fact that we have a reflection of the character, which is just a copy of the spine character, but upside down. And we more or less play as the reflection, not so much as Mo herself. So the camera starts to follow the wrong part of the character, basically. And I guess that is the best place to show it.
Yeah.
Or on the entrance to Easy Island, it works as well, because anything that's on the water has this kind of effect.
Yeah. So the character, like Julian mentioned, it's a copy of the character, which has these shaders, so it appears as a silhouette with the official darker watercolor, whatever the watercolor is, and it has inverted gravity. And in order to make it appear in the water, it's not attached to the bottom of the character, right? We actually have also upside down platforms for this reflection character, so we can decide what the distance between the character and the reflection is. So because a lot of things look like really, really awkward when the reflection is actually just attached to the character, because we have this fake. We don't have actually 3D. It's all fake, right? And sometimes the illustration suggests more difference, and sometimes the illustration suggests that her feet are touching the water, right? So we needed to always control what the distance is. So when there's a hill, which is also giving a reflection in the water, the shadow also needs to be like on top of that hill, but upside down, not where the character is. So we also had our level designers build upside down levels wherever this reflection character needs to pop up.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember in which of the headspaces I can find this?
In two and up. I think actually in all of them we made this like a major thing, but the second the second group, and we played around with it. Sometimes we use this reflection without the shader, so to make it actually like a mirroring reflection, and sometimes that's the first one. That's not
that's not the one, right?
Yeah, 2 and up.
It needs to be the one after that one. Oh, so now we're going to spoil some other environments.
Sorry, spoilers. If you haven't played the game.
It's all right.
But Math Plus Games, it seems like it's loading a lot, but when you're playing it, it's actually quite efficient. So you can go back to look at the whole stream to see how they made it so efficient.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for example, like this object over here also has the same kind of effect on it, and when we overlap with can't. Anytime we would overlap, these two shapes would again like merge into one, and into one color, and that's the reflection. The things that we do as reflections.
There was actually quite a few technical issues in keeping the animations of both actors in sync. Sometimes because like we really had to make sure that the running animations exactly start in the same frame. Otherwise, the feet would be like the shadow would be out of sync with the character. There were some of this stuff.
And I think this.
Yeah, you need to push the shell.
Right. Yeah. So we have some very light puzzles like this one over here, where we push the shell over to that platform to get on it, and then we can jump on that platform. I'll just fast mode this.
Ooh.
Love this fast mode. Is that ever used in the game at any point?
No. It is a very particular dev cheat.
Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah. And here in this part of the game, we need to collect these memory animals, and I just collected the wrong one because they have a specific order in which they need to be collected. So let's move this to the other side. I guess this is the place where we can see this very obviously. The camera starts to follow the bottom part of the character and isn't like the main character isn't even shown anymore on screen.
Wow.
And we're rather playing the reflection.
And in later parts, the platforms aren't mirrored, so you kind of like need to switch over and have to basically carry two characters through the environment at the same time using this. And this is like this idea for the gameplay started with the technical solution for the shadow, right? Because we saw, okay, this is what we have to do anyway. So how about we make actual level design out of this?
Yeah.
So and that's how these spaces came to be.
Oh, I love that. That's a really great puzzle, actually.
I love seeing like the inspirations for different ideas and how they can come from different things, right? Like, and in this case, coming from a technical solution.
Yeah, I guess the development for many ideas in the game were very organical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for showing that. Yeah, chat was kind of curious about how you accomplished that. Was there anything else that you wanted to show us or could show us about this, or?
I think that is all, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. We went through a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Is that it, Julian?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
There's always more. Yes. I think for now it's enough.
Yeah.
No, I think that was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know you stayed, like both of you stayed way longer than you were supposed to, but I'm sure chat really appreciated obviously they did because they had so many great questions. But thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, this was Studio Fizbin, both Engine and Julian. Thank you for coming by. Please go check out their game. It's out on all platforms. Follow them on Twitter, give them nice reviews, learn more about the game. I'm throwing everything into chat, so please go check it out. But yeah, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed your time here.
That was amazing.
It was a pleasure.
Oh, that was amazing for us. That was just one of the most incredible streams. Like, we learned so much, and honestly, such a unique game, and the love you've put into it really shows in every aspect, even the way you talk about it.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
Absolutely.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
Also, thank you to the chat.
Yes.
So how involved everyone was. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that there was a good mix of people who were just really invested in the technical part, but people who came because they just loved your game. Like I don't think these were people who knew anything about game development, but
People
they
were
talked
writing
about
full
it.
reviews in the chat.
Full reviews, yeah, and they're saying it changed their lives. So I was like, I'm like, wow, that's incredible.
We're getting some 10 out of 10s.
But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming. We really, really appreciate it. Chat, thanks for coming. This wraps up our We Love Indies week. Come back next week where we're going to check out Last Stop. Last Stop, by Variable State. And we're also going to have a Let's Play stream for those who don't know. With the Learn team, we're going to do a Crate with Code showcase. So look forward to that. We're going to play some of your best games from that showcase. Really excited for that. And then we're going to be taking a little bit of a break for this summer. So you guys can take a break from seeing our faces. I'm sure you're tired of it. So
short break, about a week and a half, but we'll be right back.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a huge pleasure. Thanks for making the Creator Spotlight series so amazing. And thank you again to Anjan and Julian for ending this week so wholesomely and so great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who helped on the game.
Yes, agreed. Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Tim, for showing up in chat and encouraging us.
All right.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.